I have seen some of the high-end computer manufacturers of desktops and even laptops come and go over the years. But one name that's still around today for high-end builds and computers is Alienware. Now, Alienware has come a long way over the years, and this particular machine here is one of their Aurora machines built back before they even were owned by Dell. Alienware was their own entity back in that day, and I even got an Alienware hat that came with it. This machine was shipped with Windows XP Professional, and this guy even shipped with the floppy drive still installed. But now Alienware is owned by Dell, and I brought you guys an earlier video that I've done on one of their laptop series, and it involved this motherboard right here. This is to a Alienware M17x R2 laptop, and I did a full video on that with a complete teardown and a power jack replacement on that video. Well, in this video, what I'm going to be bringing you is a screen replacement on that same exact model. Hello everyone, I'm Tim with timscomputerfix.net. I own a computer repair shop here in Savannah, Georgia. TCR, Tim's Computer Repair. If you're in the Savannah, Georgia area and you need any help repairing your computer, please look me up. I'd be glad to help you out. You can go to timscomputerfix.net to learn more about me and my services. But in this video, I'm going to be showing how to replace a screen that's in an M17x R2 laptop. Now I will tell you, I'm not going step by step through the teardown. I'm going to kind of breeze through that. If you want a complete step by step for the teardown of this particular laptop, please go back to my previous video entitled M17X R2 Factory Defective Motherboard, which has to do with the removal of the motherboard and the power jack repair. I'll put a link to that video down in the comments section also. But in this video, I really want to concentrate on replacing the screen because Dell Alienware makes it pretty doggone difficult to replace these screens, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about as this video progresses. So I will make a little disclaimer here. I'm using some sharp objects in this video that and so I would highly recommend exercising caution, and this is at your own at your own risk, I should say, because one of these objects that I use is a pretty sharp knife. So please be careful when you do this job. It can be a little tough. One slip and you could cut yourself or hurt yourself. You'll see what I mean in the video. Anyways, I hope this video helps anyone that's trying to replace their screen on an Alienware M17X R2. So let's get started here with the steps needed to gain access to the screen on this laptop. Of course, we're going to be removing the battery, the back panel, a couple screws holding that in. We'll just remove the back panel. Once that back panel is removed, we can take out the hard drives. This particular one has two. Yours may only have one. There's one out, there's two out. Okay, we'll flip it on over. Open the lid. We're going to gain access here to the button board. Just pop it right off. There's a ribbon cable underneath this button board, so be careful. But we'll remove the button board. That'll give us access now to the keyboard. Remove the screws securing the keyboard. And when removing the keyboard, be careful, as there is 2 ribbon cables holding that together, or holding that on, connected to the board, as seen here. So we'll just remove the cables. And that'll pretty much remove that. And what we're looking at here, we're going to close this back, flip it back over. We're going to go ahead and remove a few of the screws that are holding the palm rest on. So we'll take those screws out. Once we have those screws out, we can flip it back over. Open the lid. And now we push the palm rest away from the lid, slide it away in order to unlatch it. And we have to be careful here also, as there is a ribbon cable here also for the touchpad and button board. So we'll remove that. Now we have our palm rest out of the way. Okay, now this is our SLI/Crossfire cable. This particular M17X has 2 video cards bridged with in this case, Crossfire cable, which we're removing here. Please be very careful with this cable. It is quite delicate, but we'll carefully remove that from one of the video cards, video card 1 shown here. And we'll kind of tape it down to the side to get it out of our way. We're now going to be removing the antenna wires, Bluetooth antenna wires. Pull them out of the slot here. And we'll also pull those back and get them back out of our way a bit. That goes right up to the top lid where the screen is, so we'll just put them back out of the way. And now we're going to get to the camera cable and the video cable. The 2 cables that we need to pull off away from the board. They just snap on, so we just pull them off. And we'll pull those out of their location, get them freed up. And then we can start taking the screws out, which is going to release the magnesium cover here. And that's what we're going to need to release. We need to remove the magnesium cover in order to gain access to the screws that hold down the top lid where our screen's located. So once we remove all of the screws that hold down the magnesium cover, it's real important to be very careful about how you pull this magnesium cover off, as we have ribbon cables and wires and our Crossfire cable that all slips through it. So just kind of take your time at this point to be sure nothing's catching or snagging on the magnesium cover. We'll go ahead and just pull that right on off. Very carefully. And off we go. Now, very good. Now we can access the 4 screws that hold the top lid in place where our screen is located. Two on one side, 2 on the other. And then you have to kind of close the lid at an angle a little bit before the hinges will come loose. But we'll just lift right off. And there we go. Now we have our top lid off, ready to go. Okay, next we need to remove the 2 screws shown here on either side of the clutch cover. Remove those 2 screws, and what that does is that releases a small panel on the back side of the lid. This whole screen is going to have to be accessed from the rear. So from this point, we'll push this panel downward, and it kind of unlatches itself once the screws are out, and that exposes a few things. One, that exposes the clutch cover internals, the video cables. It exposes more screws that are also holding this back panel on. So we'll take these 2 screws out here as shown, and actually this whole back panel, you slide it downward or upward. Actually slide it upward, watching those cables carefully to be sure you're not putting too much tension on them. But once it slides out, it just flips up. Now be very, very careful here. There's one cable that goes to the alien head that is a bit delicate, but you see here that exposes the entire back side of the screen, all the cabling that we need to take off. We're going to now unlatch the alien head connector. Again, being very careful. This is a very small, delicate cable here, and that's off there. So now the idea here is we're going to have to actually push this screen through the front of this lid. It won't come out from the back, but we have to access it from the back to remove the cables. So we're going to remove these cables so that we can then get ready to push this screen out through the front after we remove the Gorilla Glass, which is glued down in these gaps shown here. This is the part of the job that is going to be the most difficult and requires the most patience. Dell, in my opinion, doesn't want the average technician removing, or the user or the customer replacing their screen themselves. It's obvious with the glue that they use on this. It's a really time-consuming process, but we're going to start here first. Now what this is that I'm pointing to is the bracket that's holding the antenna wires. You have one on one side and one on the other. These are held down with screws, but they're also glued. They're also glued in. So we start with these, and we're going to take out the 2 screws that hold them in, and then from that point we're going to have to work a tool in to try to loosen the glue that's holding this down. Now you can use whatever flat tool that you prefer. I'm using the iSesamo in this particular case, and basically what I'm doing is I am trying to separate the glue from this piece here, and you really want to use something that's flexible, flat and sturdy, and you really don't want to, how can I put it, put too much pressure on the Gorilla Glass behind it, because basically there is a black border around the edges of the Gorilla Glass, and that black border is just paint that can be scratched off easily. So be very careful. We don't want to physically scratch or scrape any part of that Gorilla Glass on the front of this top lid. If that would be the case, we would have to purchase another piece of Gorilla Glass, which could be a bit difficult or expensive. Now there's also tape here holding down this antenna cable bracket. So we'll pull that off too. peel it all back like so. And now we're a little bit more loose now, and I'm going to give you an angle here to kind of show you exactly what we were facing here. Kind of run our tool, keep running it, but you have to have a lot of patience with a job like this. You certainly can't rush it. You'll definitely break something. But once you get to a certain point, you know, you'll be able to see up underneath the bracket. You'll be able to see the glue here, what's holding it down. And this is a perfect example here. That looks like a wire, but it's not. That's actually part of the glue that was holding down the bracket. So all we have to do really is just break that free. It's just black. The black glue is very similar to what holds screens down on iPads. I like to refer to it as the type of glue that they use to put front windshields in vehicles or cars. So there's one side up, okay? And now we're going to go to the other side. The same technique is needed, along with a lot of patience. Remove the tape. You run your flat tool up underneath and behind to loosen the glue. I wouldn't use any heat at this point since that is pure plastic. I didn't need to anyway, so just kind of worked with it a bit. But that kind of broke loose there. So we'll just take those back and set them aside, and we'll go to the next step here. Okay, now the real fun begins. Separating the Gorilla Glass from the top lid casing, which is also made of magnesium. I'm using a hot air rework station. I'm keeping a good distance away from the plastic itself, and I'm also constantly touching the Gorilla Glass just to see how hot I'm getting, and I do not want to overheat this because I could actually melt the Gorilla Glass. So with a little heat, a little patience, I'm using my Reassemble tool to try to work this in. And what I really realize is while the Reassemble is a really good tool for separating, there's the glue on there, pretty tough, separating small items like iPhones and iPads, it's really not practical for doing a job like this. And as I go, you can see here on the front side where that glue is kind of coming down into the casing. Don't worry about that. We'll clean that up when we're done. So you can see the progress I've made here, and believe me, this is time-lapsed. I've spent quite a bit of time separating this. But, you know, around these smaller edges, both sides and the top, you know, are the easiest. It's when we get down to that bottom section where most of the glue is applied down there by the hinges is where we're going to have the most trouble. So I'm starting left and right first, top. See here, I've already got it loose. This is with some heat and a thin tool. And I've already peeled this off. I'm re-breaking the seal basically. I've already gone through the trouble, but it's just kind of resealed it. So I'm just kind of going to run my tool down and get it loose. So now I'm to this point. I've got both sides done. And now I'm on this bottom piece, and you'll see how difficult this Reassemble tool here is already starting to fall apart on me. My hands are hurting from using it. Once we get to this point here, it's really not practical. So I'm going to have to use a bigger tool. And let me show you what that tool is. This is in combination with heat. That's right, a 12-inch kitchen knife or a carving knife. I found to be best. So I'm applying heat, and this knife slides right down, nice and easy. Breaks the seal. Use that in combination with heat. I would be careful about scratching the actual LED screen behind it, just in case if it's not the screen, it could be a cable. You never know. This is the perfect tool for this, I found. Just please use extreme caution, as you could easily slip. You know, using any kind of force. Watch where your fingers and your hands are. But you can see here how I'm kind of working it back and forth. There's no wires in between here that you have to worry about. There's no wires or connectors here. You just want to be very patient and be sure you're not using too much force. You don't want to slip. Like I say, you don't want to pull on that Gorilla Glass too hard because it will crack. So as you see here, I'm just applying a little more heat. I'm on the other side of it now. This is all the bottom part of the glue area near the hinges is where you'll have the most trouble. And the key here too is not to scratch the Gorilla Glass either. So everything is all about patience. Notice here too, as I'm applying heat, I will every now and then touch the glass to make sure that I'm not getting too hot. I do not want to melt the plastic or warp it. But here I take my knife again, and we just keeping my hands away the best that I can. We'll pry this open, kind of work our tool down in there. Work it in, wiggle it back and forth. And the idea of using such a long tool is I can get back in behind that clutch cover. It was the toughest part to get a tool. There's no way to get a tool back there. So with this knife, I'm actually able to go all the way down the bottom side of it. And there was a little slip, but that's fine. I didn't scratch anything, I didn't hurt anything, so I'm okay there, just to show how easy it is for that to slip on you like that. So now I'm at the center point here where the Alienware symbol is. I'm touching the Gorilla Glass, being sure I'm not too hot. I just want to get it warm enough to kind of soften that glue up a little bit is all I want to do. So I'm taking my time here, making sure it's all right. And now you can see how deep I can get with that knife. I'm way down in there now where no other tool can get that I have. So I came up with this knife idea. So now I'm working it all the way down the center. Very carefully, careful not to scratch anything. And then once I get to a certain point, I'm kind of reheat here. And I've gotten the majority of it loose. You'll see here I'll be able to actually take the Gorilla Glass and just kind of pull it out in a way, taking my time, being sure I have enough loose here. This just took a long time to do. This job will take you some time. Trust me, you need to charge accordingly. So you see here how I can now kind of pry this up, and there we go. I finally came loose. There's a piece of clear plastic here that just covers the LED light for the Alienware symbol. But we are free and clear from the base, from the back cover shell, and there we have it. But you think that's the toughest part. Here's the next toughest part, is actually cleaning all this up. All of this glue that you see here needs to be removed from both the Gorilla Glass and the top lid shell. But first we need to remove the screen. So we'll remove the cable, the data cable. There are two cables, data cable. I think there's like two data cables, but one of them's the data for sure. So we'll remove this one large one here. It just kind of clips in, and then we'll remove the other small one. Kind of off camera here, we'll get a better view. This one here, that's the one we need to remove. Moving on now to the screws that hold the screen in place. There's 3 on either side. You just simply remove those from both sides, and then we should be in a position to actually push this screen out through the front. So these screws are shown here. We'll just get rid of those, take them out. And now we'll be ready to push the screen through the front like we're shown here. Being sure all your cables are loose, nothing's in the way. And the screen comes right off. And there we have it. All that work just to remove this screen is something else, but it is what it is. You might have some glue that's kind of tacking down a little bit on the screen. You just, pull it away. It's all good. And now we go to the preparation process of cleaning up all the glue, getting it ready to remount, get it ready for the new screen. We're going to have to re-glue or retape the Gorilla Glass back on here, but first we must remove all of the glue residue, and I'm going to show you how to do that here. You can see just how thick they put this glue on in some places, so it's going to take quite a bit of work to get this off. We want to start off really by just kind of scraping off some of the thicker loose stuff first. So I'm just using a razor blade here. There's another way to be very careful and cautious here using razor blades, but I'm just going to go along the whole surface and just kind of scrape off some of the excess glue before I start using anything that kind of loosens that up anymore. So we'll start off like that. We'll just go around and just kind of scrape off the excess stuff, whatever comes off the easiest. And we'll just work our way around and start there first. Yeah, so once we have all of the excess glue taken off, you'll start to accumulate a mess like this. That's just how much I've taken off just by removing excess. Now we're going to start getting into applying a chemical to break down this glue so we can really strip it down nice and clean. And I like using Goo Gone. This stuff works great. You can get it at any hardware store. What Goo Gone does is, the way I do this is I'll just dab it with a rag there and sort of saturate the glue a little bit. It'll start to break it down and make it much easier to remove. Now this is a real important process here because we want to be sure we don't have any residue or any part of this glue left, so we can make a real tight seal when we go to reapply our adhesive and put our Gorilla Glass back on. But just from what we're doing here, you can obviously see that the Goo Gone is definitely the way to go. It's making this job a lot easier. It's coming off nicely. It's just one of those things, you take your time, you work with it, allow yourself plenty of time because you're going to be there a while cleaning this stuff off. So we're almost done here with the bottom part of our bezel, of our magnesium shell here. Now notice here by the webcam, I've taped off the webcam lens itself to keep from damaging it, and I'm actually using a Q-tip to apply the Goo Gone, which works pretty well. You will create quite a mess. This is what it would look like when you get it done. So be prepared for a messy job, but it did the job well. We were all prepped out, ready to reapply the Gorilla Glass. But first, we're going to put our screen back into place. We've also prepped and cleaned up the Gorilla Glass itself. We want to be sure there's no glue residue on that. We did that with the Goo Gone also. and a rag. No razor blade on that. We don't want to scratch it. So we're going to start to prep these surfaces to go back in. But obviously, our next step would be to put our new screen back into place so we can carry on with finishing the repair. Here we're just putting the ribbon cable back into place. This is after we mounted our new screen and put the screws in on the sides. We're putting our cables back. We're putting the antenna wire brackets back on. You don't need to use glue, just use the screws that were there. Make sure all the wires are routed correctly, and we just slide back on our top lid cover. Goes on just like we took it off. We'll lock it down with our screws. And then here's our little plate that just kind of slides into place. And there are also, it snaps in, then there are 2 screws that we took off originally that we just put back on. Flip it over, put the screws in. So we're good to go there. So at this point, it's really important to test our screen, our new screen, before we seal the Gorilla Glass back on. It is also really important to point out that with this model laptop, it is required to have the keyboard plugged in order for the laptop to power on with the power adapter. Always remember that with this laptop will not power on without the keyboard when you're trying to power it from the power adapter. So once we have those 2 items plugged in, and in this case I used an external keyboard, I just wanted to confirm that our screen is working okay. So I've temporarily mounted the lid and connected the cables, and I'm just checking to be sure that our new screen checks out okay. And from this point it looks like it's doing just fine. So we can go ahead and remove it from the hinge again, lay it back down, and now we're going to start cleaning our surfaces for one last time. Any dust, debris, fingerprints, anything that you do not want sealed between your Gorilla Glass and the screen, because once it's on there, it's on there. Clean it up nicely. And what I do here is I just kind of test fit the glass. I'll kind of test fit it a couple of times to be sure I know exactly how it lines up. Just, once the adhesive is on there, I just want this to be a one-time deal. So I'll just test fit it a few times just to be sure I know exactly how I want to place it. Right. So once we've established that, what I'm going to be using here is double-sided tape. And I've got a roll of this. I'll put the link to this down in the chat. But this is a 3M double-sided tape. It's a very thin double-sided tape. Very similar to the type of tape that's used in iPhones and iPads, except those are pre-cut. So we're just going to put strips. We're going to tack it down to wherever the Gorilla Glass is going to make contact. We're not going to cover up any screws. We're not going to cover up any holes or ports. We're just going to go ahead and cover as much of the surface as we can with this tape. This is also a fairly time-consuming part of the job, but you want to do it right, because once this glass is on, you want it to stay. So once I've done it, this is what it's going to look like. This is how I've done it. Everywhere I've put my tape, It's everywhere that glass is going to be making contact. Top and bottom. I think that should do pretty well. So from that point, we're good to go to actually start peeling off the top side of the tape. And I'll just take a pair of tweezers or some type of a sharp pick and just to kind of peel up, get up underneath the adhesive there and peel off the top side of the tape so we have so our top part will be sticky. Pull it off just like that. And I'm also going to apply small amounts of silicone glue in a few places in the corners and a couple by the webcam, a couple down the sides, and then I'm going to lay my glass into place. We get one shot, so make it right. Check the edges. Start mashing it down. Start pressing down firmly on all the glue locations. And then you can pretty much start to clamp it down. I use these clamps here to clamp down the glass to kind of hold it into place nice and gently. And then we'll clamp top and bottom. And we'll pretty much let this sit up for a few hours and stay into place. And that's it. From that point, you can put your top lid back on your Alienware laptop and away you go. Well, everyone, I hope this helps someone out in trying to repair their screen on an M17x laptop from Alienware. It could be quite a difficult task to do, but hopefully this video will help somebody in that task. Hey, I've got the complete teardown and reassembly guide on my previous video of this particular laptop. Just go back to my last M17x Alienware video, and a complete teardown and a complete reassembly is shown there in video if you need any help there. And again, I hope this video helps somebody out. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for all your support. Please rate and subscribe to my feed. If you like what you see, I'll have more coming your way soon. My website is timscomputerfix.net. So until next time, everyone, see you soon.